it is a huge paradigm shift for teachers. And, you know, there's a saying, you teach the way you were taught. And I taught pre-service teachers. And so I knew the kinds of lessons we were writing and all of the things we were working on throughout the semester, and we finally step out to do some work in a classroom, and I'm watching one of the interns and I'm thinking, where did that come from? But she was right back to doing spelling like her teacher had done spelling many years ago. And so this kind of a paradigm shift, I think intuitively teachers feel that about their students. But I think there is a fear of, well, how do you deliver that? And because these structures have created a comfort for us. And if you start to peel those structures away, and we had a little bit of this at Frederick High School with students being able to earn credit by demonstrated mastery. Well, if they can do that, then they don't have to take my class. Oh my gosh, then do I have a job? But Michelle, talk about what happened, how that teacher's role evolved.
Sure, students are always going to need teachers. You know, for those of us who are parents, that's going to make or break our child's class. You know, I have a daughter, she's going into 8th grade at Middletown Middle, and really it's all about the teacher and the teacher's energy that brings any subject to life. And so as our Credit by Demonstrated Mastery program has grown at Frederick High School, and more students, particularly in the area of fitness for life, are starting to pursue that. It's not that they don't need their teacher, they need their teacher more than ever. In fact, I just left Frederick High School and Coach Rhodes is sitting there one-on-one with a student going through this, but really in a personal way, you know, guiding the student through, okay, what are the competencies within physical education? What are you doing? What matches your strengths? What is left to be done? How can we fill gaps? It's a whole different way of being a teacher in a much more personal sense. Very time consuming, but worth it for the student and the teacher.
And the type of focus of our teaching might extend beyond STEAM, because now we're talking about his third principle, which is that what if, and the use and the mindfulness around understanding and respecting various pathways to getting to your outcome. So in what you've just said, which I think is really crystallizing, and I can see now why you're an exemplary educator, it's very important for us to bring the character and character development into our classrooms. That does require teachers. That's the oversight. That's how we can make sure that students that are in their own experiential and immersive experiences develop the core of responsibility, accountability, honesty, respect, trust, collaboration, partnership, leadership. Those are all skill sets that very nicely integrate with the STEAM programs that schools traditionally are built upon. And it doesn't require us as educators to go back and get more schooling or be retooled, and maybe not necessarily a huge paradigm shift. If we help and support our educators to become more engrossed in that integration of those core values around the STEAM curriculum, that's what I would like I'd like my students to actually manage forward. That's a contribution that I can give to them in my oversight.
Well, and I think it creates an ownership for the student. Listening to the young people at Frederick High who had taken that Credit by Demonstrated Mastery route, that pathway, I think they could articulate the standards and expectations far more than a student who is merely doing the assignments and coming to class in order to get the grade for the course. And so, again, when you can take away and free up that structure a little bit more, some powerful learning can occur that fits these principles that he talks about in this book.
It's the icing on the cake. Yeah.
You know, as I read the book, I found myself nodding along, you know, in agreement. This is common sense, we do this, whatever. But there was a point where I said, I don't know, and I want to know what you think about it. You know, one of the arguments that he makes is that we have the tools now. All we need is the mindset. And I'm not sure I agree with that, because I know people who have the mindset, really truly, and have the tools. But what, in my mind, what it really requires is a stamina. You know, it's a stamina. It's very difficult, time-consuming to personalize and individualize all day, every day. You know, it requires patience. It requires having heart-to-heart conversations with people who are complicated and complex and change on a day-to-day basis. It's draining, it's exhausting. And so I wonder, you know, as I think about it, and he lays it out so clearly, you know, we've got the tools, all you need is the mindset, let's go. I think the road is a little bit more challenging than that. I don't know what you think about that.
I would 100% agree with you. I think the intensity of being the teacher shifts if we go to a full competency skill-based approach to education. And there is a lot more one-on-one. And you're talking about energy and stamina. Yeah. I mean, that's a real high caffeine day to keep up with 15 or 20 students. Those are long hours, and maybe then we need to rethink the support system we have for our teachers in even all the way up to the university level. I teach entrepreneurship. I want to tell you, I'm a high energy woman. Some days, some weeks I'm there 60, 70 hours because I'm doing one-on-one, because I can't do what I need to do in the classroom of 20.
Well, Tim and I were having a conversation before the book study, and I want to ask Tim to weigh in on this, because one of the points that the author made, he was talking about being a college advisor. Remember that part? And he said, well, I went to my advisor for advice, and I got advice, and then another girl was completely different from me, got the same advice from the same advisor. And he said, I don't blame my advisor. He said, it's very time-consuming for somebody to dole out customized advice to a bunch of freshmen who don't know what they're doing. And, you know, we talk a lot in education about class size. And I know that in 2010, when I was Teacher of the Year and I stood before the board and I talked about the incredible impact of large class sizes, and Tim and I were having a conversation about class sizes, and I don't know, I thought maybe you could share, because it pinpoints how difficult it is to individualize and personalize even when you want to.
No, exactly. I mentioned before that over a 3-year period, class sizes, my average class size went from about 16 to 25 to 35. Whoa. And it certainly changed my style of teaching. Not that I'm a lecture-based teacher by any means, but I certainly had to break the class into smaller groups and have those smaller group presentations and demonstrations to really make sure the students were grasping the concept. It wasn't one of those things where I should stand in front of the class, or I wanted to stand in front of the class to give an art demonstration. I had to literally go over a lesson and then break the class into groups, navigate the classroom, and make sure all the students were grasping the concept. So it does change your style. You want to meet the needs of every student in the room, and that's something that I know I have a goal every single day.
But it just shows the practical implications. It's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to make it happen. And in my comments to the board at the time, this was 8 years ago, I said, you know, I've got a 90-minute block. Let's say I have 30 kids in my class, which actually had more than that, but just for easy numbers, you know, 90 minutes, 30 students, that gives you 3 minutes with each student, and that's if you teach nothing. That's if you build no community. That's if you just spend your whole time going from student to student. So I guess where I struggled with the text was, it's really not just about mindset and tools. There are practical implications of trying to do this, none the least of which is, as you said, the drain, the incredible energy drain, and what it requires of teachers. And then the teacher walks away at the end of the day feeling ineffective because they know they haven't reached every student. Right. It's complicated.
It is complicated.
And I want to add one thing to stamina, because I'm looking at this from a policy perspective and thinking it also would take incredible political will. Because if you look at the mandates we face in public education, everything is test-driven, everything is about accountability, everything is about comparing one to the other. And even as we had legislators in Maryland trying to figure out how could we have less need for remedial classes when they go to the community college, the answer became, well, let's test all of them in 11th grade. And if their test score says they're not ready for college and career, that one test score, then we can do something in 12th grade so they'll be ready. And the stamina, the energy it's going to take to convince people that that's not the answer we need in the 21st century. And we really do need to rethink some of those structures we're putting in that, in addition to the stamina and the energy, stymie some of what we know and feel intuitively as educators.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because if you read all the way through the acknowledgments, the very last 2 paragraphs of the acknowledgments, the author thanks his father for teaching him what he said was the greatest lesson of his life, that you can absolutely respect and cherish tradition while still questioning absolutely everything. That just because as we try to move forward and do different things, it doesn't mean that what we did before was not right or not good, or that it should be forgotten or thrown out, but that the only way to move forward is to just keep questioning and keep pushing.
Which speaks to the fact that Dr. Rose ends up at a very prestigious Ivy League university that's quite traditional in the way it teaches.
There is an irony to that.
Yeah, and he's the director of the Institute for Individuality. So the fact that Harvard can have an Institute for Individuality is kind of an oxymoron to me. And when I was reading this book, because I'm from Boston and I know Harvard extremely well, I said to myself, how did this all happen? This man is, he walks on water because he moved and shifted one of the oldest Ivy League institutions in the country to embrace individuality. Then there is a method to his madness that we might have just even take a little piece away to begin to start and ignite the spirit of innovation, creative analytical thinking in our policymakers. Because I think at a policy level, we would have a huge gap between policy and what Dr. Rose is advocating in terms of competency and skill-based.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons we had to ask for some shift in policy in order to do links. So, well, thank you so much for embracing individuality, on joining me in reading this thought-provoking book. And we hope that you will continue the conversation with us through our Twitter chats, and we have more panel discussions coming your way as well. Thank you for joining us.